Sarah Martinez had always been different from the other girls in her small Texas town of Cedar Ridge. While her classmates spent their afternoons at the mall or gossiping about boys, Sarah could be found at the local track, her worn-out sneakers pounding against the red dirt surface as she ran lap after lap. The 17-year-old had dreams that stretched far beyond the dusty roads of her hometown, dreams that seemed impossible to everyone around her. Her father, Miguel Martinez, worked double shifts at the local steel mill to keep food on the table for Sarah and her younger brother Carlos. Her mother, Elena, cleaned houses for the wealthy families on the other side of town. Money was always tight, and luxuries like proper running shoes or training equipment were out of reach. Sarah made do with whatever she could find, running in basketball shoes that were 2 sizes too big and timing herself with an old digital watch her grandmother had given her years ago. The track at Cedar Ridge High School was nothing special. The surface was cracked and uneven, with weeds growing through the lanes. The school's athletic budget went mostly to the football team, leaving the track and field program with scraps. Coach Henderson did his best with what he had, but even he seemed to have given up hope that anyone from their small school would ever amount to anything in the world of competitive running. Sarah's passion for running had started when she was just 8 years old. She remembered the exact moment it began, watching the Olympics on their old television set, mesmerized by the grace and power of the female runners as they flew around the track. Something inside her had awakened that day, a burning desire to be like those women, to feel that same freedom and strength. From that moment on, she ran everywhere. She ran to school. She ran home. She ran to the grocery store for her mother. Running became as natural as breathing. But dreams don't pay bills, and Sarah's parents worried constantly about her future. They wanted her to focus on her studies, to maybe become a teacher or a nurse, something stable and practical. Miguel would shake his head when he saw her heading out for another run, muttering in Spanish about foolish dreams and wasted time. Elena was more supportive, but equally concerned. She had seen too many young people in their town chase impossible dreams only to end up disappointed and bitter. The other kids at school didn't understand Sarah either. They called her weird, obsessed, a loner. Jessica Hartwell, the most popular girl in their senior class, was particularly cruel. Jessica came from money. Her father owned the largest ranch in the county, and she never let anyone forget it. She drove a brand new BMW to school and wore designer clothes that cost more than Sarah's family made in a month. Jessica seemed to take personal offense to Sarah's dedication to running, as if it somehow threatened her own position as the center of attention. During PE class, when they had to run the mile, Jessica would make loud comments about Sarah being a show-off. "Look at her go," Jessica would say to her friends, loud enough for Sarah to hear. "Think she's some kind of Olympic athlete or something. How pathetic." The other girls would giggle and agree, making Sarah feel even more isolated and misunderstood. Coach Henderson noticed Sarah's talent early on, but he was realistic about the limitations they faced. The school had no money for travel to major competitions, no proper training facilities, and no connections to college recruiters. He did what he could, timing Sarah's runs and giving her advice on technique, but he often felt like he was doing her a disservice by encouraging her when he knew the obstacles she faced were nearly impossible to overcome. Sarah's best friend, Maria Gonzalez, was one of the few people who truly believed in her. Maria wasn't a runner herself. She was more interested in art and music, but she understood what it meant to have a passion that others didn't understand. She would often come to the track after school to keep Sarah company during her training sessions, sitting on the bleachers with her sketchbook, drawing while Sarah ran endless laps. "You know you're special, right?" Maria would tell her during their walks home. "I've never seen anyone move the way you do when you run. It's like you're flying." Sarah appreciated the support, but sometimes even Maria's encouragement felt hollow. What good was being fast in Cedar Ridge, Texas, where nobody important would ever see her run? The regional track meet was coming up in 2 months, and Coach Henderson had been trying to convince Sarah to enter. The competition would be fierce, with athletes from schools across 3 counties, including some that had proper training facilities and experienced coaches. Many of these schools had track programs that had been producing scholarship athletes for decades. "I don't know, Coach," Sarah had said when he first brought it up. "What if I'm not ready? What if I embarrass myself and the school?" She was scared, not of losing, but of confirming what everyone else seemed to believe, that she was just a small-town girl with big dreams and no real talent. "Sarah," Coach Henderson had replied, his weathered face serious, "I've been coaching for 27 years, and I've seen a lot of runners come and go. You have something special. I can't promise you'll win, but I can promise you'll regret it if you don't try." His words stayed with her, echoing in her mind during every training run. The truth was, Sarah had been harboring a secret hope for months. She had been researching the state record for the 1,500-meter run, a record that had stood for 15 years. It had been set by Jennifer Walsh, who had gone on to run for the University of Texas and eventually competed in the World Championships. The record seemed untouchable for minutes and 12 seconds. Sarah had never been officially timed over that distance, but her calculations based on her training runs suggested she might be close. She had shared this secret with no one, not even Maria. It seemed too crazy, too impossible. A girl from Cedar Ridge High School, training on a broken-down track with no proper coaching or equipment, challenging a record set by someone who had gone on to international competition. It was the stuff of movies, not real life. But late at night, when the house was quiet and her family was asleep, Sarah would lie in bed and imagine herself running that race. She could feel the burn in her lungs, the rhythm of her feet against the track, the sound of the crowd fading away until there was nothing but her heartbeat and the finish line ahead. In those moments, the dream felt real and achievable. Her training intensified as the regional meet approached. She would wake up at 5:30 every morning and run 6 miles before school. After classes, she would head to the track for speed work and technique practice. Her times were improving steadily, but without official timing equipment or competition experience, she had no real way to know how she measured up against the competition she would soon face. The people in town had started to notice her dedication. Some were supportive, like Mrs. Patterson, who owned the local diner and would always have a glass of water ready for Sarah when she ran past. Others were less encouraging, viewing her obsession with running as a waste of time that would lead nowhere. "That girl needs to get her head out of the clouds," she overheard Mrs. Thompson saying at the grocery store. "Running around in circles won't put food on the table." Even within her own family, opinions were divided. Carlos, her 15-year-old brother, thought what she was doing was cool and often tried to run with her, though he could never keep up for more than a quarter mile. Her parents remained conflicted, proud of her dedication, but worried about her future. They had seen too many young people in their community chase dreams that never materialized, leaving them unprepared for the realities of adult life. The pressure was mounting from all sides. Teachers were concerned about her grades, which were still good, but not as high as they had been before she intensified her training. Her part-time job at the local grocery store was suffering because she was often tired from her morning runs. Her manager, Mr. Rodriguez, had started making comments about her reliability, threatening to reduce her hours if her performance didn't improve. But Sarah couldn't stop. The pull was too strong, the dream too vivid. Every morning when her alarm went off in the dark, she felt that same spark of excitement and determination that had first ignited when she was 8 years old watching the Olympics. This was who she was meant to be. Everything else felt like a distraction from her true purpose. As word spread about her intention to compete in the regional meet, the reactions around town became more pronounced. Some people were genuinely excited and supportive, seeing her as a symbol of hope and determination. Others were skeptical and even mocking, viewing her ambitions as unrealistic and setting her up for disappointment. Jessica Hartwell's attitude became particularly venomous as the meet approached. She seemed to take personal pleasure in publicly doubting Sarah's chances and making cruel comments about her prospects. I heard Sarah Martinez thinks she's going to break some kind of record, Jessica announced loudly in the school cafeteria one afternoon. Can you imagine? A girl from this nowhere school thinking she can compete with real athletes? It's almost sad how delusional she is. The comments stung, but they also fueled Sarah's determination. She had always been motivated by proving people wrong, and Jessica's cruelty only made her more determined to succeed. Each hurtful comment became fuel for another lap, another sprint, another push toward her seemingly impossible goal. The day of the regional track meet arrived with an unseasonably cool breeze that carried the scent of rain. Sarah had barely slept the night before, her mind racing between excitement and terror. She had dreamed of this moment for months, but now that it was here, the reality felt overwhelming. The competition would be held at Jefferson County Stadium, a proper athletic facility that made Cedar Ridge's cracked track look like a child's playground. Miguel had taken the day off work to drive Sarah to the meet, despite the lost wages they couldn't afford. Elena had packed a cooler with homemade sandwiches and fruit, fussing over Sarah like she was heading in a battle rather than a track meet. Carlos had begged to come along, and the whole family piled into their aging pickup truck for the 2-hour drive to the stadium. As they pulled into the parking lot, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The stadium was massive, with real bleachers and a professional-grade track surface. Athletes from dozens of schools were warming up on the field, their colorful team uniforms and expensive equipment making Sarah acutely aware of her own simple outfit. A pair of running shorts her mother had sewn for her, and a Cedar Ridge High School t-shirt that had seen better days. The other athletes looked different too. They moved with the confidence of people who had been competing at this level for years. Their coaches carried clipboards and stopwatches, barking out technical instructions and race strategies. Sarah suddenly felt very small and very alone. Coach Henderson found them near the registration table, carrying a small bag with Sarah's race number and spiked shoes that the school had managed to scrape together the money to buy just weeks before. The shoes were used, purchased from a graduating senior in a neighboring school, but they were real track spikes, and Sarah felt a surge of gratitude and excitement as she laced them up. "Remember what we talked about," Coach Henderson said quietly as Sarah stretched and prepared for her warm-up. "Don't get caught up in what everyone else is doing. Run your own race. Trust your training." His words were meant to be encouraging, but Sarah could hear the nervousness in his voice too. This was uncharted territory for both of them. The atmosphere at the meet was electric. Parents filled the stands, many of them carrying professional cameras and wearing team merchandise that probably cost more than Sarah's family spent on groceries in a week. Scouts from various colleges roamed the stands and field, clipboards in hand, watching for standout performances that might earn their schools the next generation of athletic scholarships. Sarah's event, the 1,500 meters, wasn't scheduled until late in the afternoon. She spent the morning watching other races, studying the competition, and trying to calm her nerves. The level of athleticism on display was intimidating. Sprinters exploded out of the blocks with perfect form, distance runners moved in packs with tactical precision, and field event athletes threw and jumped with power that seemed almost superhuman. During lunch, Maria called Sarah's phone to wish her luck. "I know you're scared," Maria said, her voice crackling through the poor cell service. "But you belong there, Sarah. You've worked harder than anyone, and you're faster than you think. Just run like you do at home, like when it's just you and the track and nothing else matters." As the afternoon wore on, Sarah's nerves intensified. She tried to eat one of her mother's sandwiches, but could barely manage a few bites. Elena noticed and began speaking to her in rapid Spanish, the same soothing words she had used when Sarah was little and afraid of thunderstorms. Miguel sat quietly, his weathered hands clasped together, occasionally reaching over to squeeze Sarah's shoulder. The 1,500-meter field was announced an hour before race time. Sarah's heart sank as she looked at the roster. There were runners from schools she had only heard about in whispered conversations, schools that regularly sent athletes to state championships and produced Division I college recruits. Jennifer Walsh's record might be 15 years old, but many of these athletes had personal bests that were uncomfortably close to that mark. As Sarah made her way to the warm-up area, she overheard conversations that made her stomach churn with anxiety. Coaches were discussing their athletes' race strategies with casual confidence, throwing around times and splits that seemed impossibly fast. One coach was explaining to his runner how to negative split a 4:15 race, a time that was already faster than Sarah had ever run in practice. The warm-up area was crowded and intimidating. Athletes stretched and jogged in their team groups, many of them wearing matching warm-up suits that probably cost more than Sarah's entire wardrobe. She found a small space near the fence and began her own routine, trying to block out the noise and focus on her body and breathing. "Is that the girl from Cedar Ridge?" Sarah heard someone say behind her. She turned to see two coaches looking in her direction, one of them pointing. "I heard she thinks she has a shot at Walsh's record. Pretty ambitious for a kid from nowhere." The other coach laughed. "These small-town athletes always think they're faster than they really are. She'll learn soon enough what real competition looks like." Their words cut deep, but Sarah tried to use them as fuel, just as she had with Jessica's cruel comments back home. As race time approached, Sarah's family moved to a spot near the finish line. Miguel had brought an old camera, determined to capture whatever happened, whether triumph or heartbreak. Elena clutched a small cross necklace, whispering prayers in Spanish. Carlos bounced nervously, more excited than anyone else in the family. The call came for athletes to report to the staging area. Sarah's legs felt heavy as she walked toward the track, her mind a swirling mixture of fear and anticipation. Coach Henderson walked beside her, offering last-minute reminders about pacing and tactics, but his voice seemed to come from far away. The other athletes in the staging area looked calm and professional. They chatted casually with their coaches, some of them laughing and joking as if this was just another day at the office. A few stretched or did strides, their movements fluid and practiced. Sarah felt like an imposter among them, a pretender who had somehow fooled everyone into thinking she belonged. One runner in particular caught Sarah's attention. Amanda Collins from Westfield Academy was the favorite to win, and possibly to challenge Walsh's record. She was tall and lean, with the economical movements of a natural distance runner. Her warm-up gear was pristine. Her spikes were clearly new and expensive, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never doubted her abilities. When she looked at Sarah, it was with a mild curiosity one might show toward an interesting but ultimately irrelevant curiosity. "First time at regionals?" Amanda asked, not unkindly, but with a tone that suggested she already knew the answer. When Sarah nodded, Amanda smiled. "Don't worry. Just try to hang on for as long as you can. The pace usually gets pretty hot in this race." Her words were meant to be helpful, but they only reinforced Sarah's growing sense that she was out of her depth. Everyone here seemed to know something she didn't, to possess some secret knowledge about racing at this level that couldn't be learned from running alone on a broken-down small-town track. The officials began calling athletes to the line for final instructions. Sarah's mouth was dry, and her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone around her could hear it. She tried to remember all of Coach Henderson's advice about race tactics and pacing, but her mind felt foggy and unfocused. As they walked onto the track, the crowd noise hit Sarah like a physical force. The stadium was packed, and the energy was palpable. She had never run in front of more than a few dozen people before, and the sea of faces in the stands was overwhelming. She tried to spot her family, but couldn't pick them out in the crowd. The starter called them to the line for introductions. As each athlete's name and school was announced, different sections of the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. The runners from the bigger schools received enthusiastic responses from large groups of supporters wearing team colors and waving banners. When Sarah's name was called, the response was noticeably quieter. She could hear her family cheering and a few other scattered voices, but it was a stark reminder of how alone she was in this environment. She waved awkwardly and tried to smile, but her face felt frozen with nervousness. The athletes were given a few minutes to do final preparations and strides. Sarah tried to find her rhythm, to reconnect with the feeling she had during her training runs back home, but everything felt different here. The track surface was springier than what she was used to. The air felt different. Even the sound of her footsteps seemed foreign. Coach Henderson appeared at the fence near the starting line. "Sarah," he called out, motioning for her to come over. When she jogged to him, he put his hands on her shoulders and looked directly into her eyes. "I need you to forget about everyone else out there. Forget about the crowd. Forget about the records. Forget about what anyone expects or doesn't expect from you." He paused, making sure she was listening. "You've got something special inside you. I've seen it in every training session for the past 2 years. Whatever happens today, you belong here as much as anyone else. You've earned this moment through every mile you've run, every morning you got up in the dark, every time you chose to believe in yourself when no one else did." His words penetrated the fog of Sarah's anxiety, and she felt a small spark of the confidence that had carried her through countless training sessions. She nodded and jogged back to join the other athletes, trying to hold on to that feeling. The starter called them to their marks for the final time. Sarah found herself in lane 8, on the outside of the field, which was typically where the slower qualifiers were placed. It was another reminder of her outsider status, but it also meant she would have a clear view of the entire field during the race. As she settled into her starting position, Sarah tried one more time to quiet her mind and connect with her body. She thought about all the mornings she had run alone on the Cedar Ridge track, all the time she had pushed herself beyond what seemed possible, all the dreams that had sustained her through months of preparation. This was her moment, her chance to prove that dreams were worth pursuing even when everyone else thought they were impossible. The gun fired, and Sarah's world exploded in emotion and sound. The field surged forward as one, a river of determination and ambition flowing around the first turn. Sarah found herself caught in the middle of the pack, her heart hammering as she tried to establish her position while navigating the chaos of 8 runners jockeying for favorable placement. Amanda Collins had taken the early lead, as expected, setting what felt like a blistering pace. Sarah's instinct was to go with her, but Coach Henderson's voice echoed in her memory. "Don't get pulled out too fast. Trust your training." She forced herself to settle in behind the leaders, even though every fiber of her being wanted to charge to the front. The crowd was a wall of noise, but as they completed the first lap, Sarah began to find her rhythm. Her legs felt good, her breathing was controlled, and slowly the nervousness began to transform into the familiar joy she felt during her best training runs. This was what she had been born to do, what she had dreamed of since she was 8 years old watching the Olympics on that old television. As they passed the 400-meter mark, the electronic timing board showed 68 seconds. Sarah's mind quickly calculated. They were on pace for something special. Record pace. Her heart leaped with excitement and terror. Could she really be running this fast? Could she possibly maintain this speed for 3 more laps? The second lap began with the field still tightly bunched together. Sarah found herself in 4th place, directly behind Amanda Collins and 2 other highly recruited athletes. She could hear the labored breathing of runners around her, could feel the tension and strategy playing out in real time as each athlete tried to position themselves for the crucial moves that would come in the final stages of the race. Halfway through the second lap, one of the runners ahead of Sarah began to fade. Sarah smoothly moved around her, finding herself in 3rd place with 2 laps remaining. The crowd noise intensified, and she could hear scattered shouts of "Go Cedar Ridge" that she knew had to be coming from her family. At the 800-meter split, the clock showed 2:16. Sarah's mind reeled. If she could maintain this pace, she would not only break Jennifer Walsh's record, she would shatter it. But maintaining this pace seemed impossible. Her legs were beginning to feel the accumulation of lactate, and her breathing was becoming more labored. Amanda Collins was still leading, but Sarah could see that she was working harder now. Her form was becoming slightly less efficient, and her breathing was audible even over the crowd noise. The runner in second place, a tall girl from Metro Prep Academy, was hanging on grimly but clearly struggling. As they entered the third lap, everything changed. The pace, which had felt manageable for the first half of the race, suddenly felt crushing. Sarah's legs began to feel heavy, and her carefully controlled breathing became more ragged. This was the moment Coach Henderson had warned her about, when the real race began, when fitness and talent mattered less than heart and will. The Metro Prep runner fell back dramatically, unable to maintain contact with the leaders. Sarah found herself in second place, just a few meters behind Amanda Collins, with 600 meters of racing left. The crowd was on its feet now, sensing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. But as they approached the bell lap, disaster struck. Sarah felt her legs tie up as lactate flooded her system. The pace that had felt challenging but manageable suddenly became excruciating. Amanda Collins was pulling away, and two other runners were charging up from behind, their fresher legs carrying them past Sarah suddenly, leaden form. With 300 meters to go, Sarah found herself in fourth place and fading fast. The dreams of record-breaking glory were evaporating with each painful step. Her form was deteriorating, her stride shortening, and the finish line that had seemed so achievable just moments before now felt impossibly far away. The crowd's roar became a painful mockery as Sarah struggled to maintain any semblance of competitive pace. She could see Amanda Collins driving toward the finish line, her form still strong, her kick devastating. The second and third place runners were locked in their own private battle, both of them clearly running much faster times than Sarah would be able to achieve. In the stands, Sarah's family watched in agony as their daughter's dreams seemed to crumble before their eyes. Miguel gripped the fence so tightly his knuckles were white, willing his daughter to find something extra. Elena had tears streaming down her face, torn between heartbreak for Sarah's struggles and fierce pride in her courage. Carlos was shouting encouragement that Sarah couldn't possibly hear over the din of the crowd. With 200 meters remaining, Sarah was in fifth place and falling further behind with every step. Her vision was beginning to tunnel, her legs felt like concrete, and every breath was a struggle. This was the moment she had feared most. The public humiliation of failure, the confirmation that everyone who had doubted her had been right all along. But then, somewhere deep inside her exhausted body and broken spirit, something stirred. It wasn't physical. Her legs were still heavy, her lungs still burning. It was something else, something that had been forged during all those lonely morning runs, all those times she had pushed through pain and doubt when no one was watching. Sarah thought about her parents, who had sacrificed so much to give her this opportunity. She thought about Coach Henderson, who had believed in her when no one else did. She thought about Maria, whose unwavering faith had sustained her through the darkest moments of doubt. And she thought about every person who had ever told her that her dreams were too big for a girl from Cedar Ridge, Texas. The change wasn't immediate or dramatic. Sarah's legs were still heavy, her breathing still labored. But something fundamental shifted in her mind. The pain didn't go away, but it became acceptable, manageable. The exhaustion didn't disappear, but it became a familiar companion rather than an enemy. Step by step, meter by meter, Sarah began to close the gap on the runners ahead of her. Her form didn't improve. If anything, she looked more tired than before. But her pace began to increase, powered not by physical strength, but by something much deeper and more powerful. With 150 meters to go, she passed the fifth-place runner, a girl who had been recruited by 3 Division I universities. The crowd noise reached a new level of intensity as people realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. This unknown girl from a nowhere school was making a charge that defied both logic and physiology. Amanda Collins crossed the finish line in first place. Her time is solid 4:18, fast, but well short of the record. The battle for second place was fierce, with two runners sprinting desperately toward the line. But all eyes in the stadium were beginning to focus on the girl in the Cedar Ridge uniform who was somehow finding speed when she should have been slowing down. With 100 meters remaining, Sarah passed another runner, moving into fourth place. The electronic clock on the stadium scoreboard showed that record pace was still possible, though it seemed impossible that this exhausted-looking teenager could find the speed necessary to achieve it. Sarah's family was screaming themselves hoarse in the stands, though their voices were lost in the roar of 8,000 people who were witnessing something they had never seen before. Coaches from other teams were watching in amazement, unable to explain what they were seeing. How could a runner who had looked completely spent just 200 meters earlier be moving faster than athletes who had been running competitively for years? The 50-meter mark approached, and Sarah was now in third place, gaining ground on the two runners battling for second. The clock showed 4:06, 4:07, 4:08. The record was still within reach, but time was running out. Sarah would need to find another gear that didn't seem to exist. But in that moment, with the finish line looming and the crowd on its feet, Sarah discovered something about herself that she had never known existed. The pain that had nearly broken her became fuel. The exhaustion that had threatened to end her dreams became purpose. Every doubt, every cruel comment, every moment of feeling inadequate became power. Her final kick wasn't pretty or technically sound. Her form was ragged, her breathing was desperate, and her face was contorted with effort. But she was moving faster than she had ever moved in her life, faster than physics and training theory suggested was possible. The finish line rushed toward her, and Sarah threw herself across it with everything she had left, collapsing immediately onto the track as the stadium erupted in the loudest cheer many had ever heard. She lay there gasping, unable to move, unable to think, unable to do anything except try to get oxygen back into her burning lungs. The electronic timer flashed the results, and for a moment, the entire stadium fell silent as people tried to process what they were seeing. Then, the cheering began again, louder and more sustained than before, as the impossible became reality and dreams proved stronger than logic. Sarah Martinez, Cedar Ridge High School, 4 minutes and 9.73 seconds. New meet record, new state record, new regional record. The numbers on the scoreboard seemed to shimmer in the late afternoon sun, and for several moments, the entire stadium remained in stunned silence. Then, as if a dam had burst, the crowd erupted in the loudest celebration anyone present had ever witnessed. 8,000 people were on their feet, cheering for a girl they had never heard of 20 minutes earlier. Sarah lay on the track, unable to move, her chest heaving as she tried to process what had just happened. The time didn't seem real. For minutes and 9.73 seconds, she had not only broken Jennifer Walsh's 15-year-old record of 4 minutes and 12 seconds, she had obliterated it by more than 2 seconds. In track and field, margins of victory are usually measured in hundreds of seconds. What Sarah had accomplished was the equivalent of a boxing knockout or a basketball game-winning shot at the buzzer. Coach Henderson reached her first, kneeling beside her on the track with tears streaming down his weathered face. In 27 years of coaching, he had never seen anything like what had just happened. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the continuing roar of the crowd. "Do you know what you just did? Do you understand what this means?" Medical personnel arrived to check on Sarah, concerned about her condition after such an extreme effort. Her heart rate was dangerously elevated, her body temperature was through the roof, and she was showing signs of severe dehydration. But her eyes were clear and bright, and slowly, a smile began to spread across her exhausted face. Sarah's family had fought their way down from the stands, Miguel's tough exterior finally cracking as he saw his daughter lying there, having achieved something that no one in their wildest dreams could have imagined. Elena was sobbing openly, clutching the fence, and calling out to her daughter in rapid Spanish. Carlos was jumping up and down, screaming, "That's my sister," to anyone who would listen. As Sarah slowly sat up with help from the medical staff, the magnitude of what had happened began to sink in. The other runners who had finished ahead of her in the race were coming over to congratulate her, their own disappointment at not winning temporarily forgotten in the face of what they had witnessed. Amanda Collins, who had won the race but whose time was now overshadowed, was the first to reach her. "I've been running competitively for 6 years," Amanda said, offering Sarah her hand. "I've trained with college athletes, I've worked with professional coaches, and I've never seen anything like what you just did. That was the most incredible kick I've ever witnessed." Her words carried the weight of genuine respect from one athlete to another. The stadium was slowly beginning to empty, but dozens of people lingered, many of them taking pictures and videos of the scoreboard that displayed Sarah's impossible time. College recruiters who had been watching other athletes were now frantically making phone calls and taking notes, suddenly very interested in the unknown runner from Cedar Ridge High School. As Sarah was helped to her feet and began walking slowly around the track to cool down, she was approached by a woman in her 40s wearing University of Texas coaching gear. "Sarah Martinez?" the woman asked. When Sarah nodded, the woman extended her hand. "I am Jennifer Walsh." Sarah's legs nearly gave out again. Jennifer Walsh, the woman whose record had stood for 15 years, the athlete Sarah had watched countless videos of online, the runner who had inspired her to believe that great things were possible. She was here, in person, and she was smiling. "I came here today to watch my nephew run in the boys' 800, Jennifer explained. "I had no idea I was going to witness the most incredible performance I've seen in 15 years of being around this sport. What you did out there wasn't just athletic, it was artistic. It was poetry in motion." Jennifer's presence attracted the attention of reporters who had been covering the meet. Local newspaper writers and a few regional sports journalists gathered around, their cameras clicking and notebooks ready. Sarah had never been interviewed by media before, and the attention was overwhelming. "Sarah," one reporter called out, "what was going through your mind during that final 200 meters when you made your move?" Sarah tried to find words to describe the indescribable. How could she explain the moment when pain became power, when exhaustion became energy, when doubt became determination? "I just remembered why I started running," she said finally. "I remember being 8 years old and watching the Olympics and thinking that someday maybe I could feel what those women felt. And in that moment, I realized I was feeling it. I was living my dream, and I wasn't going to let it slip away." Coach Henderson stood nearby, fielding calls from college coaches and recruiting coordinators. In the span of 30 minutes, Sarah had gone from unknown small-town athlete to one of the most sought-after distance running prospects in the country. Schools that had never heard of Cedar Ridge High School were suddenly very interested in learning more about their program. As the media attention continued, Sarah's parents were finally able to reach her. Miguel wrapped his daughter in a bear hug, his tough exterior completely dissolved. "Mija," he whispered, using the Spanish term of endearment he had called her since she was little. "I'm sorry I ever doubted you. I'm sorry I didn't understand." Elena was crying too hard to speak, simply holding her daughter and stroking her hair. The celebration continued long into the evening. The team from Cedar Ridge, all 4 athletes who had qualified for regionals, was invited to a dinner hosted by the meet organizers. Sarah found herself seated at a table with college coaches, former Olympic athletes, and sports journalists, all of them wanting to hear her story. During dinner, Jennifer Walsh pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. "I want you to know something," she said. "When I set that record 15 years ago, I thought I had reached the absolute limit of what was humanly possible in that race. I trained with the best coaches in the world. I had access to altitude training and sport science that most athletes can only dream of." She paused, looking directly at Sarah. "What you did today with your background and your resources is the most impressive athletic achievement I've ever witnessed. You didn't just break my record. You redefined what's possible when talent meets absolute determination." The ride home to Cedar Ridge was surreal. Sarah sat in the passenger seat of the family pickup truck, staring at the medal around her neck and the trophy in her lap. The Texas countryside passed by in the darkness, and she found it hard to believe that the girl who had left this morning was the same person returning home as a state record holder. When they arrived back in Cedar Ridge near midnight, they found Main Street lined with cars and people. Word of Sarah's achievement had spread throughout the small town, and it seemed like half the population had turned out to welcome her home. There were homemade signs, balloons, and a banner stretched across the street that read, "Welcome home, state champion." Maria was in the front of the crowd, tears streaming down her face as she ran to embrace her best friend. "I told you," she whispered. "I told you that you were special. I told you that you could fly." The two girls hugged and cried together while the crowd cheered and cameras flashed. Even Jessica Hartwell was there, looking uncomfortable but genuine as she approached Sarah near the end of the celebration. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I was cruel and jealous, and I was wrong. What you did today was incredible, and I'm sorry I ever doubted you." In the weeks that followed, Sarah's life changed completely. College recruiters called daily, offering full scholarships to some of the best track and field programs in the country. Sports Illustrated wanted to do a feature story on her. The Olympic Training Center invited her to a development camp. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. The town council announced that they were renaming the track at Cedar Ridge High School, Sarah Martinez Track, and investing in renovations to bring it up to competitive standards. They wanted to ensure that the next generation of dreamers would have better resources than Sarah had started with. Coach Henderson was offered several positions at larger schools with better programs, but he chose to stay at Cedar Ridge. "This is where the magic happened," he explained to anyone who asked. "This is where a girl with a dream and no resources prove that anything is possible. Why would I want to be anywhere else?" Sarah's record stood as a testament to the power of believing in impossible dreams. Other athletes would eventually challenge it. Runners with better resources and more advanced training would chase her mark. But none of them would ever be able to replicate the circumstances under which it was set. A small-town girl with limited resources, running in borrowed spikes on borrowed time, finding something inside herself that she never knew existed. Years later, when Sarah was competing at the international level and had achieved success beyond her wildest childhood dreams, she would still return to Cedar Ridge for the annual track meet. She would watch young athletes chase their own impossible dreams, and she would remember the feeling of lying on that track, gasping for breath, having just proved that mockery and doubt are no match for determination and heart. The scoreboard at Jefferson County Stadium was eventually replaced with a newer model, but they saved the display panel that showed Sarah's record-breaking time. It now hangs in the Cedar Ridge High School trophy case, next to a photo of a 17-year-old girl crossing a finish line with everything she had, proving to the world that sometimes the most powerful stories begin with someone saying, "Go ahead, let her try."